In this episode of Meaningful well, okay. That was really fun.
Right?
Guys, for those who are tuning in now, we just
did it just now.
We just recorded the episode with Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro, how are you, dude?
Yes, it was quite an experience.
It really was. He's cool. He's a cool cat.
He really is. You know, it's so funny. Like his public persona, I feel, is like very cold, robotic, and like people think that, and I think he has to be that way because like sort of the industry that he's in.
Yeah.
But
it's the order of the day in the work that he's doing, but he got really human with us.
He is human.
Yeah.
He is human. I think that's like,
in case anyone had a...
Well, Nachi, like that was good. Ben Shapiro's a human being.
Confirmed.
If you got anything from this episode, you know that Ben Shapiro is a human being.
He's a good man.
He's a good dude. And he's so like, he knows so much Torah. But Momo challenged him.
I did. And he accepted a spiritual challenge.
So people
listen up.
Yeah, people are going to listen up. There's a spiritual challenge in this episode for Ben Shapiro. He also challenged me.
Ben did.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that.
Are you up to it?
I don't know. I'm just like scratching my beard right now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he may have invited you on TV.
I don't know.
If you were listening big.
I don't know. Anyways, guys, go ahead and listen to the rest of this episode with Ben Shapiro and make sure to leave 5 stars, leave a review, rate us.
It might be hard to understand what we're talking about right now, but after you listen to the episode, maybe re-listen to the intro and it'll come together.
Anything will make sense.
Yeah.
That is the
More
world.
will be revealed.
Yes. And of course, a big shout out to our friends from Bridge Credit
Solutions.
They are the best in the credit repair company, and I'm just trying to think if Ben Shapiro was promoting Bridge Credit Solutions. I can't speak as fast as he could. So if you want to get that similar vibe, maybe put this ad on like double speed or triple speed. Guys, Bridge Credit Solutions will help you fix your credit. They will, help you achieve financial freedom.
They will.
You don't need to be tied to these negative reports in your credit. You can go ahead and get that fixed today. The link to reach out to them is in the show notes. People have heard us talk about them and have reached out to them, and their credit is a lot better now.
It really is.
And it could be first-time home buyers, and they're walking with a nice, beautiful credit score, and they're buying a house with ease. Guys, you know what to do.
When you go walking, don't forget to go walking with your credit score. Don't leave your credit score at home.
Credit score comes with you everywhere, and everyone has a credit score, and everyone needs
Bridge Credit Solutions.
We're getting better at that. No, like I look at him and then he pauses for a second. But anyways, hit the link in the show notes and enjoy this episode. You are listening to the Meaningful People podcast.
The podcast featuring our nation's most impactful, influential,
and meaningful people. So let's jump right in. First of all, I wanted to thank you so much for taking your time. I spoke to Rabbi Efrem Goldberg this morning. I wanted to thank him as well for making this happen. And I wanted to preface this by just sort of framing this experience, for you. I know every day you speak to millions of people, but this podcast specifically, thank God, has the largest reach in the Orthodox world, the Jewish Orthodox world. And I'm excited to really get them to know you a little bit better.
It sounds great. I look forward to it.
And I'd love to, invite you to spread any message that you have that you're passionate about for the Orthodox world to find out about, to say that on this show. So thank you so much, for joining us. It's really, really nice to see you. The first question I sort of wanted to put out there for you is discuss Jewish identity. Sort of, what is your definition of Jewish identity, and where does that identity rank amongst the other identities that you have as Ben Shapiro, the show, the podcaster, the celebrity? So where does your Jewish identity rank, and how do you define Jewish identity?
So the way that I identify Jewish identity is, I think, dual. It's actually a model that comes from Rav Soloveitchik in Koldo Didofek. Right? He basically summarizes that there are two covenants. Right? There's Brit Hagaral and Brit Yaud. Basically, there's the covenant of what he calls the covenant of fate and the covenant of destiny. The covenant of fate is the idea that you're bound together with Jews because that's just the way things work. That when you're a Jew, you will be treated as a Jew, and whether you embrace that identity or whether you don't embrace that identity, there's no way to escape that identity. And that's the sort of dark and depressing version of what it means to be a Jew, because historically you see that is reality, is what he calls the covenant of fate. Then he says that the covenant of destiny, which is embracing that covenant of fate, recognizing that's the reality, and then embracing the godly values embodied by the Torah. And that's what you pass on to your kids. It's what you receive from your parents. And that's the other part of Jewish identity that roughly corresponds to the idea of ethnic Judaism versus philosophical Judaism or practical Judaism. And the part that I value more is obviously the philosophical and values-laden part of Judaism, because ethnic Judaism I can't control. I don't have to convert in. I'm ethnically Jewish, and so that is what it is. And so that's why I have very little, taste for people who only rely on their identity as ethnic Jews when they're talking about things that are directly anti-biblical values. They'll say, as a Jew, I believe, and then the next thing that comes out of their mouth is something that's completely anti-Torah, something that's completely anti-halakha. It's like, well, then you can't say as a Jew, right? That doesn't count. That's not the way any of that works. As far as how you rank, being a Jew in terms of your identity, I rank being a Jew in the same way that a Christian would rank being a Christian, meaning it's number one, meaning your relationship with God is the most important thing on this earth. And if you're a religious person, of course, that is the thing that binds you both to the spiritual world and to the physical world in the ways that you act, in the ways that you address the world. And the beauty of Judaism is that Judaism is designed, if you're religious like we are, you believe by God, it's designed in order to reinforce and better certain social roles that you are created in order to play, right? The role of father, the role of husband, the role of community member. And because Judaism constructs those roles properly, this means that your relationship with the world is incredibly rich and incredibly dynamic. And it leaves you some freedom within those roles to construct exactly how you wish to fit into the puzzle that pre-existed you. But in terms of, every Jew is supposed to say the same thing as they're dying for a reason, because your core identity is that thing. I think that's the story of Avraham and Yitzchak. I mean, I think that story is essentially God saying everything is subservient to this identity. In the end, you're born a Jew and you're going to die a Jew, and everything is subservient to that identity. The good news is that as a Jew, there's a world of values to spread, and that world of values happens to coincide with a lot of really important values from natural law, from Christianity, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think a lot of natural law and Christianity, obviously Christianity, is drawn from values that are born in Judaism.
Well, being that you rank it, like you said, at the top, how does that impact your career?
Well, I mean, it only impacts my career insofar as I can't really do certain things on Shabbos, right? I mean, Shabbos and Yom Tov, I can't do things. But I've found that being a proud Jew, right, wearing a kippah, has never inhibited my career. In fact, I think people treat it with more respect. When you're committed to a system of values, people tend to treat that with more respect than the opposite. I think it's a big mistake people make in the Jewish community when they believe if I soft pedal my values, if I try to play down my differences, if I try to pretend that I'm a world citizen, then somehow this is going to increase respect for me, or somehow it's going to create more tolerance for me as a Jew. There's a situation apparently in which Shlomo Carlebach was visiting college campuses, and he was talking about visiting college campuses. He said, I can always tell who the Jew is in the room because you'll talk to a Christian, they'll say I'm a Christian. You talk to a Muslim, they'll say I'm a Muslim. You talk to a Jew, they say I'm a citizen of the world. And that's that's a real problem. Right? One of my big kind of complaints about the Jewish community is if you're supposed to be a light unto the nations, there are Jews who are significantly more knowledgeable about pretty much every aspect of Judaism than I am. Why am I the only one on TV wearing a kippah? Like, it shouldn't be. That's not just my complaint, by the way. That's the complaint of Rabbi Blech. Right? Rabbi Blech wrote a piece recently that I found incredibly compelling about Roe versus Wade and abortion, and he said it's a real shame, right? It's an actual busha that the people who are out front on this stuff are Catholic, right? The people who are out front, like if you're supposed to be a light unto the nations, where are you on issues of the day that matter, not just to the Jewish community, but to the world at large?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I love hearing you describe the richness of Judaism when one embraces those values, especially in their ability to interact with the world. I think you are uniquely positioned with the astonishing success that you've achieved to go all the way out there to a place where historically I think no frum Jew has gone. And how do you frame for the layperson that might be listening to this as an Orthodox Jew, as Nachi likes to say, driving in their car, listening to this podcast? How do they let go of, they can have a rich interaction with this world as a frum Orthodox Jewish person? I
mean, frankly, I think it's required. I don't think it's a matter of it being an option. I think it's required. I mean, the Torah is very clear that if you're supposed to be a mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh, if you're supposed to be an example to the world, in one aspect, that means that you're supposed to, act in halachic ways with regard to your own family and provide a model. But the idea that you're just going to sit there and not engage with the world is completely counterintuitive. I mean, that is not what Judaism says in any way, shape, or form. And the sort of mentality that's been cultivated over several thousand years of oppression, that the best way to keep yourself safe is to sort of, hunker down. I get it. I totally do. I mean, you want to protect your family, you want to protect your community, and maybe you think the best way to do that is to build very high walls. But the problem is those walls also keep you in and prevent you from performing the function that you really were put on earth to do. And that is a riskier proposition, no question. But it's also a much richer proposition because you're called to engage with the world. I mean, God addressed himself to human beings. If you're a believing Jew, he addressed himself to human beings because he wanted to engage with the world. And in many ways, the idea of the transcendental that is in communication with the very material is a much harder burden than the material in communication with the other material. Right. I mean, humans communicating to each other is far less a leap of faith than God communicating to human beings. And so being able to take those messages and spread them, abroad is, again, I don't think that's an option. I think that's an obligation. And frankly, it's a very fulfilling obligation. So it's as I say, it's annoying to me that there need to be more people who are wearing kippot than just me on TV talking about these things. And people need to stop pretending that it's some form of protection not to talk about these things as an Orthodox Jew. People will leave you alone. The fact is that I think that just on a statistical level, there's a solid case to be made that my show, which talks very infrequently about Judaism just straight, right? It's always talking about general values, and it's talking about politics. It's talking about things of the world. I think probably there are more Jews who have gone back to shul based on my show than based on than a lot of kiruv efforts that are explicitly directed at kiruv and getting people to go back to shul.
Nice.
Right.
Do you see that role that you find yourself in as sort of divinely orchestrated to be a light on not only to the nations, but as you say, to really inspire people to go back to shul?
I mean, I think that I've been given opportunities, right? And so if you're a frum Jew, then you always think in terms of opportunities and what you're handed. I mean, my dad once suggested to me that the definition of the word observant is when you say you're an observant, it means you observe the practices and the halakha, but it also means that you observe the world around you and you treat it through the prism of this is divinely ordained. So I don't think that God is like specifically picking me out because I'm special. I think that he has a plan for everybody. I found myself in positions of opportunity and I've been able to take advantage of those opportunities in unique ways. And so, that's frankly, it's a duty. I don't think that it's a matter of I'm so special, I made great decisions, look at me, woohoo. I don't think it's about that. I think that when you're provided an opportunity, you don't take it, that's a sin.
I mean, is that like a daunting task for you? I mean, you're given the responsibility that no frum Jew in the world is given, maybe even in history has been given.
I mean, it's fun and it's awesome. I mean, listen, I'm privileged to be able to do that. It's great. I mean, I get to do what I love, which is speaking about values and important things to millions of people every single day. I mean, what a privilege. Yeah. That's an awesome responsibility. It's an awesome privilege. I'll be the first to say sometimes I fall short of the responsibility, right? There are times I say things and I regret them, and there are times I say things and they don't come out the way that I want them to come out. And when you're riffing for a couple of hours a day, and when you're generating, literally millions of words over the course of the years, and I'm not even talking verbally, I'm talking just in written form. When we're generating that much content, there are mistakes that are going to get made. But if you don't take the opportunity seriously, and also the joy, I mean, like the fact that people take what I have to say seriously is that's an amazing thing. That's so cool. This is why when I go out and people, I thank God a lot of people come up and they ask for pictures. It happens like all the time. And when that happens, people who I'm friends with, they'll be with us and they'll be like, is that ever annoying to you? And I think, well, I mean, listen, on a personal level, if I'm out with my wife at a restaurant and I can't get through a meal without somebody wanting to take a picture, of course, that's like, come on, wait until after the meal, wait until after dessert. But on a personal level, it's not like I'm an actor and so people want a picture with me because they want my face on their wall. People want a picture generally because they've engaged with ideas that I'm promoting. And so what I would hope is that people are not as concerned with liking me. They're much more concerned with liking the ideas or being interested in the ideas that I'm promoting, because the ideas are much more important than I am. After 120 years, I'm not going to be here. I hope the ideas will still be here.
Yeah, I totally hear that. You referenced before about Roe versus Wade and abortion, and that's a hot topic, especially nowadays. And I think it's an interesting situation because you have like this high-profile Jew, Chuck Schumer, who, air quotes for those who are listening, the Shomer Yisrael, who gets out there and he says that abortion should be legal up until the moment of birth. And then your other favorite politician, AOC, says, even our Jewish brothers and sisters support abortion. It seems to be there's a misrepresentation of Judaism from people who are saying, hey, I'm Jewish and this is what we believe in, but those are not our values.
It's a wild misrepresentation. And honestly, I'm really disappointed in the Orthodox community for not coming out strong on this stuff. So you will see a statement from the Agudah, right? The Agudah made a statement about Roe versus Wade, and it was halakhically correct, of course. And you'll see particular Rabbanim who will come out and they will speak on this issue, but you never see them taking public leadership roles and advocating for particular positions on this stuff. That's your job. Why am I doing it? Like it makes me totally crazy. I know the halacha about abortion because when I try to speak about these issues, at least the ones that are sort of major public concern, I try to really, sit down and I'll study with Rabbi Goldberg, for example, and we'll actually go through the halacha and all of this sort of stuff. But the framework, when it comes to the pro-life issue, is a pro-life framework. There's no such thing. Like the pro-choice argument does not exist in Judaism. It does not. I mean, when I say pro-choice, I don't mean that there aren't circumstances in which a heter is not available for abortion, because there are circumstances depending on the rabbi. I mean, if you're Rabbi Waldenberg, you're going to be a lot more permissive than you are if you're Rav Soloveitchik or Rav Feinstein. But when it comes to the actual frame, the pro-choice narrative, which is that it's a woman's right to choose, that does not exist in Judaism. It's completely insane. It's completely outside the lines of halakha. It is never the woman's right to choose because human life is not defined by the woman's subjective needs, wants, and desires. And under Judaism, the default is you're having the baby, and then there might be heterim available if you are a person who has an extenuating circumstance. It's a very different thing from the argument that Chuck Schumer is making, which is that you can have an abortion at any time up to, like the debate in the Jewish community in halakha is like Tay-Sachs babies and first 40 days Tay-Sachs babies and like very edge cases. Those are not the debates that are being had inside the pro-choice community. There it's like, do we allow abortion, that's like after birth or like in the birth canal and like, those debates are not the halachic debate. So listening to I mean, forget, when Chuck Schumer calls himself a Shomer Yisrael, all you have to look at is what he actually did on the Iran deal. It's a convenient. I'm glad that his name is conveniently homonymic. That it sounds so much like the word Shomer, but it has literally nothing to do with what he's actually done.
That's the person who, in the world at large, who maybe don't live in the Jewish communities and know they're from Jews. That's who people say, oh, that's a Jew.
I mean, honestly, that's one of the reasons why I'm happy to be doing what I'm doing, because if you're on the right, then the most prominent Jew that you've probably heard of is me. Right. And if you're, and that's good. I mean, I don't think that the most prominent Jew that right-wing people in America, conservative people in America should have heard of is like Bernie Sanders, whose relationship with Judaism is an occasional ham sandwich and talking about how he likes bagels every so often, or Chuck Schumer, who's happy to call on his last name when it's time to win some Jewish votes in New York, but goes completely AWOL when Iran is going nuclear.
So it sounds like, I mean, the undertones are you're encouraging something from the Orthodox world. And what is that?
Yeah, get involved, get public. I mean, if you believe that Torah values inform what life is about, and that those values have something to say to the world at large, not just to Jews, but to the world at large, which they clearly do, then you need to speak out. And I'm talking about people, again, I'm not the most knowledgeable Jew out there. There are other Jews who are more knowledgeable about all this stuff than I am. It drives me up a wall that I'm being asked these questions. I mean, it was so funny. I went to YU and I spoke at YU maybe, 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And there were a bunch of liberal students who got up and they were talking, they were asking questions about abortion or same-sex marriage. And I remember saying, Rabbi Sobolewski's sitting right there. He's sitting right there. Like, if you have a question about abortion or if you have a question about any of these issues, like, that guy, right? He'll give you the Torah, he'll give you the Shulchan Aruch, he'll give you all of it. He'll give you the Shach and the Tas. Like, if you want all the way down into the details, he's sitting right there. Like, talk to him. And Rabbi Sobolewski's happy to take those questions, I'm sure. But the fact is that if you're going to have people who are advocating on behalf of a Jewish standard of law, I'm happy to do it if called upon. I'm happy to abstract out, particularly because I think that's really what my role is not to get into the nitty gritty of halakha. There are people way more qualified than I am to do that sort of stuff, but to abstract out the centralized message of what I think the value system of the Torah is, that I think I'm pretty well qualified to do. But when it comes to the details, it shouldn't be me making the advocacy move. It should be people who know better than I do.
We'll be right back to this episode with Ben. With Ben Shapiro. Did Ben Shapiro go to Turo?
He might have gone to Turo or Harvard or Turo. Turo University.
But you know what? He might still go to Turo.
He may or may not still go to Turo. We might go to Turo.
It's very possible. So we might go to Turo with Ben Shapiro.
Yes.
Anyways, if Ben Shapiro wanted to go to Turo, the place that he'd probably go to is turo.edu/more.
More.
To learn more about Turo. He would be like really tough to have in your class, no?
As a professor, he would be a tough student.
Professor? I'm talking about as a student. Yeah, like you have no chance of valedictorian if he's in your class.
Yeah.
Maybe Ben will speak at Turo.
He might.
He might. Anyways, if you're listening to this, then you know what you need to do. You're around that age. It doesn't really matter what age you are, because we've spoken about so many people who have had 7 kids, who've had their lives already, and they're like, you know what? I want to become a doctor. I want to become a social worker. I want to get into medicine. I want to become a dentist.
We've proven that the obstacles are really not in the way. And if you're listening to Ben Shapiro and you're like, wow, I really want to be an educated member of society,
you need to get educated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you go, is turo.edu/more. Don't just listen to this. Take it to heart. Head to Turo. Why do you got to take it to heart? That's so weird.
Take it to heart and take it to action.
Yeah, take it to action. Turo.edu/more. Enjoy the rest of this episode.
I want to take us back to something that you mentioned a little earlier about the gravity with which people take what you say. And I think because of the success you've achieved and the platform that you're on, people are enamored by you, and people in the Frum Orthodox community are enamored by you. And I think what that gives you an ability to do is it gives you an ability to really inspire people and to invite a lot of meaning into their life by being superhuman about things within spirituality that you might struggle with. And I've heard you share that davening, for example, something that you personally haven't connected with based on certain intellectual objections. And I want to invite you to get vulnerable about that struggle, as I think a lot of people might share that.
So davening is super hard for me. Yeah, I have a hard time with davening because I have this sort of Maimonidean objection to davening, which is the way that you're taught davening when you're a kid is you're talking to God, and you're asking God for stuff, and God gives it to you. God is gumball machine. And I'm not a big fan of the God is gumball machine idea. I think that the idea that you use davening as a way to remind yourself to work in consonance with what God wants of you. And so when you're davening, it's really more about you than it is about God. I think it's a good way to view it. I also find it very difficult to do that in the context of a very well-structured davening. I mean, it's very difficult for me to read the same words over and over every single day, 3 times a day in Shemona Esrei, and feel like I'm getting the most out of these words. And you can read Rav Schwab on these things, and you can bring commentaries, and you can try, but still, when you're doing it every single day, 3 times a day, it's hard not to eventually just find your way, like you find yourself, your head's in a different place while you're in the middle of Shemona Esrei than it should be like directly on the words and on what you're davening for. And so, on a conceptual level, the idea of a not systematized davening is very attractive to me. Like the idea that I get more out of when I'm thinking about God most is when I'm actually reading Rambam, or when I'm actually doing learning, or even when I'm studying Sorba Mirabanan, right? Like when I'm doing these sorts of stuff, that I connect more with that. I connect more with the intellectual side of Judaism. And when it comes to the spiritual side of Judaism, it really is more like the ceremonial stuff, right? Like when I'm dancing on Simchas Torah with my kids, particularly with my kids, I feel it a lot. When I'm dancing with my kids, when I'm doing Kiddush on a Friday night and my kids are there, that kind of stuff is very, but like davening is hard for me. And so when people, have a hard time with davening, I totally get it. I also think that, frankly, we in the Ashkenaz community kind of do davening wrong. It's less of a communal activity than mumble and finish, right? It's like you mumble through a paragraph of Pezukah de Zimra, and then somebody says really fast the last 2 lines. I mean, listen, I do it. I daven super fast. When I daven for the Amud, and I'm davening Shachris, like I'm famous for being able to knock that out super duper quickly.
Shocker.
I can't believe that.
Like I'm the guy you go to when you have like 11 minutes for Shachris and you need to like really move it. And I'm not trying something to brag about, frankly, because that's like pure. Like, that's like pure. Just get it done by rote. Like if you're looking for by Hallel, like so I davened Hallel yesterday by the minyan. And so I like to, the Hallel I like to sing, and that's really good stuff. Like when you actually are able to add some tunes in there and really sing it communally. The Sephardim do this more naturally. Like Sephardic davening, which takes 1 million years. It's I can say this. My wife's Moroccan, and my entire in-laws are they daven Sephardi. And I went originally. The first school I went to was Maimonides in LA, which is a Sephardi school. So I actually learned to daven Sfard before I learned to daven Ashkenaz. But the way that Sephardim daven is much closer to a communal experience than typically the way that Ashkenazim daven. My theory of davening is that basically it lengthened over time, specifically because it started off and people actually davened like the Sephardim. They're all saying it together, and they're like, "This is taking too long. Let's speed it up." And then they're like, "Yeah, but you know what? Now that we speeded it up, it's only taking half as long, so we can add some more text at the end. There's now room for more text." And so it's just now davening is 300 pages. But that sort of approach. If the davening is about the communal experience of it, then more singing would be good. Is I think the message, which is weird coming from me, who is not a huge fan of
no objection from here, from the Hasidim over here on musical people. But we heard your challenge to the Orthodox community to
Speak up.
share our views exactly with the world. I'm wondering if you're open for a challenge.
Alrighty.
A little Nasa Vanishma. So the challenge is I've heard this, where if you want to know where God expects results from you, pay attention to where there's some resistance. Pay attention to where there's, a challenge. And I think in the position that you're in, you can be an incredible symbol of someone who has grown through that challenge of davening. And maybe at some time in the future, maybe in 6 months from now, maybe in a year from now, our listeners, I'm sure, would love to hear how that spiritual journey, right? We're spiritual beings in a human condition, right? Not human beings on a spiritual journey. And I'm sure they'd love to hear how that relationship with davening might have developed further.
I like that. That's good. Okay. I'll take that up. If you have any sources you want to send me and some advice on that, let me know.
Will do.
I have one more question for you. And I think this is a very important one because you are a father, you have kids. And I'm a father, my mom was a father. We have families. And the culture of the world today is a scary place. Matt Walsh did an incredible job over the Daily Wire with his new film, What is a Woman? Keeping our homes sealed from the outside influences is a daily struggle. And I'm curious, in a hyper-focus example with you, being the personality that you are and how out there you are, how you're able to, besides for having a Ring doorbell, how you're able to seal the doors of your house and make sure these outside influences aren't getting their kids. Like I imagine you don't want your kids watching those woke TikToks and you don't want them seeing these types of stuff. Well, how do you do that? And maybe how could others do that?
Yeah. I mean, so number one, I really appreciate the product pitch right there. I couldn't have done that better myself. That was really solid.
I did like three of them. No, like that was a woman, Ring.
Yeah, that was good. If you can sneak Birch Gold in here, then we'll have hit the trifecta. But that's very strong stuff.
The market is crashing. The market is crashing. There's no better time to get Birch Gold.
Exactly. So when it comes to sort of protecting my own kids, one of the things that I love about the community we happen to live in is that it's a very tight-knit community. Pretty much everybody that my kids deal with on a daily basis is somebody who shares our value system. It's one of the reasons we moved from California. I wanted to be in a place where people shared our value system a lot more, and we've been able to find that, and we're really, really grateful for that. As far as the technology of it, my kids are still really young. They're 8, 6, and 2. And so they really don't have access to, they don't watch TV really. If they do watch, it's occasionally like one movie. I would say maybe they watch one movie on like a Friday afternoon when mom's getting ready for Shabbos. But they really don't engage too much with content like that. As they get older, it's going to have to be an inoculation process. And this is the way that I'd talk about, teaching kids, is that it's an inoculation because just like an inoculation is taking a less severe strain of a particular disease and then allowing your body to build up resistance to it, I think that you can't overwhelm your kids with the ugliness that's out there. You can have open discussions with the kids about why the ugliness that's out there is out there and why it's wrong. I think it's really important to do that because otherwise they get hit with a disease that they have no immune system for. And I think this is the biggest mistake that the educational community has in the Orthodox community, is that there's this idea that if you just bubble everybody off, because understandable, you're trying to keep everybody safe. You bubble everybody off. This is particularly true for high school students. When you're talking about like 4th graders, no, you have to bubble them off. But when you get to kids who are 13, 15, 16 years old, and they're going to be engaging with the world because technology is just too ubiquitous and there's no way to avoid it, then avoiding these conversations and also avoiding saying hard things in these conversations is a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake. So I was having a conversation recently with somebody about the value systems that are being inculcated in high schoolers. And what they were saying, they were talking particularly about LGBTQ issues. And what they were saying is they've been saying to the kids, we have to be tolerant, we have to be accepting, but Judaism says this behavior is wrong. And I said, you've got the sentence backwards. You have to be, the sentence is backwards. It's this behavior, according to natural law and Judaism, is not in consonance with the fulfillment of human identity, but you should be tolerant to people who are failing in this way or who have these drives. Right? When you start off with the tolerance and the acceptance, you're saying that is the predominant value as opposed to what's right and wrong. The right and wrong is the predominant value, and then the tolerance and acceptance can be built on that, right? I mean, it's din with mercy, right? You have to have justice, and then the mercy's on top of it. But if mercy is the predominant value, then justice can't exist. So you have to at least explain why things are right and wrong, and then you can get to also treat people well. Right? But if you start with the sort of baseline secular niceness standard, which is everybody should be nice to one another, then that becomes the actual morality. And that's not morality. Okay, the idea that there are no standards for behavior and that the way that you and that the predominant morality is acceptance and celebration of all forms of behavior equally. And also we happen to think that this kind of behavior is less acceptable than other kinds of behavior. That is not a message that's going to resonate. It has to be rooted in the identity conversation that we were talking about earlier. It has to be rooted in being able to make the kind of compelling arguments on behalf of traditional morality that actually are natural law-based. Like, I think that it's not enough to do we brought our kids up to, in and from school, and we tell them that Vayikra says X, Y, and Z, and therefore they should take it at face value. Because guess what? Once they get out of that frame of reference, things collapse really, really fast, because if somebody just comes in and says, okay, well, I don't believe that, now explain, and they have no explanation, it's very, very difficult for them to come back from that. And so you have to inoculate. You have to make these arguments to your kids. You have to address these issues and take them seriously and have open conversations about them and take your kids' questions super seriously. I think that's the only way. And I don't think that's a way. I think it's the only way to inoculate your kids to the challenges they're going to face in the secular world.
Yep. Ben, thank you. As we wrap this episode, this is the Meaningful People podcast. We're wondering, what is the most meaningful part of your week?
And the most meaningful part of my week is, believe it or not, typically during Shabbos, Shacharis, not the davening. It's typically
Not yet.
Not yet. We'll work on it.
Stay
But
tuned.
I've been sitting next to my father in shul every week for my entire life. So when we moved to Florida, he moved here too. And so he and my mom are here. And so every Shabbos, he comes and he sits with me at shul, and my kids invariably escape the children's groups. And so I will end up with all three kids typically on my lap in the middle of davening, and my dad is over here, and across the mechitza where I'm never supposed to look is my mom and my wife. And it's listen, that's what the generational, you feel the generational tradition, which is really what this is all about. You're a chain and a link of time.
Yeah.
It didn't start with you. It's not going to end with you. So you better hold that. You better be a solid link in that chain, or the chain breaks. And when that happens, something inestimable is lost.
Ben Shapiro, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And listen, we'll follow up with you hopefully in a little bit, and maybe you'll have some long payas, maybe a shtreimel, maybe a long jacket.
I feel like it might undercut the image, but I appreciate the idea.
Hey, listen.
Grow payas on your neshama. That's where it
we
counts.
ranked Jewish identity one. Jewish identity is one, right?
Hey, you know what? You grow a long beard, and we'll talk about it. You're both clean shaven, I noticed. So
You sound like Rav Chaim Kanievsky now. That's wow. Okay. Okay, Ben Shapiro, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys.
Take care.
Oh my gosh, what an experience.
Right?
What an experience. I feel like the intro could have been the outro because that was the first thing we did. Right, whatever. You guys don't understand what I'm saying. Neither do I. But
Ben Shapiro.
yeah,
Ben Shapiro.
Ben
What a
Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is his name. He gets mistaken for Mordechai Shapiro all the time, I heard. No?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Does he though?
I don't know. I wonder what Morty thinks about that. But Ben is awesome.
He really
and
is.
And he really left a lot on the table for us to think about. You know, he's not a Rav or a rabbi or a rabbinical authority, and he made that clear, and he knows that. But he put a lot out there for us to think about. I think there's really some interesting things. There's so many things out there about
Very thought provoking. Very, very mindful. Very meaningful. I think he had some really good things to say.
Yeah. Do you feel challenged?
I do. I don't know exactly how to implement.
But
his
maybe there are
challenge.
people listening that could implement what he said. There's so many issues that are near and dear to the Jewish people, that affect the Jewish people, that he seemed a little ticked off. He's the only one speaking about these issues.
Yeah.
We don't want to tick off Ben. So I feel like he's going to write a million words. He's going to write a song.
The other challenge that I have to figure out how to do is I have to figure out how to get him content.
Yeah, to daven.
Introduce some more meaning to his
Okay,
davening.
so guys, here's a challenge for the audience.
Yeah, specifically on this here, right?
Yeah.
So davening, he mentioned the philosophical objection that he has,
Mm-hmm.
right? That God has a gumball machine. This is what I deserve.
Spiritual Amazon.
And I'm persuading Hashem to give me something that I don't deserve, right? And he acknowledged that there is a concept that when we daven, we change who we are and we become more worthy. And that certainly does happen. But davening is so much more than that, right? Davening is this gift that we're given from Hashem, that we are able through our davening to be ma'orer, to awaken the midas harachamim, and to transform the way in which God interacts with the world from midas hadin to midas harachamim.
Right.
We could do that with our tefillah,
Right.
and that's extremely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
There's also another concept where the way God runs the world order that Hashem has put into the world is that shefa, bounty, is activated through our tefillah.
It's like turning on a faucet.
Correct. That is the mechanism. That's how we draw down that which we might even deserve, right? Like the Svarim say that the grass was ready to grow, but before mankind came into the world to daven for it to grow, it wasn't able to grow.
Right.
Because it needed that tefillah to activate the world order. And if someone can send me a lot of these sources, I need to get this to Ben Shapiro.
You can send it to meaningfulpeoplepodcast@gmail.com. If you think there are specific, like maybe you're about tshuva and you went through your own process of getting closer to Hashem and davening, and you think that there's something that he would benefit from, you can send it to meaningfulpeoplepodcast@gmail.com. But until then, we love seeing your feedback. We love reading the reviews that you write. It helps us. So go ahead. If you're listening on Apple, you could just write a review. You could rate us 5 stars, and we read them. And we sometimes like read it by our dinner table to our kids. Just say this is our value base. Like, I am 4 stars today. I am 3 stars. I'm kidding. But go ahead. If you're on Spotify, you can rate it 5 stars as well. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, because we have so much more content coming your way, and you want to be the first one to know about it. Because if you don't hit subscribe, then it'll never find you. Will it though? Anyways, children and men and girls and boys and everyone, hope you enjoyed this episode with Ben Shapiro, and stay tuned for another episode coming your way next week. Adios.
Thank you.